Welcome to the full real-world road test of the new TVS Apache RTR 160 4V. Now this is a road test which has been designed by you guys. Road test. So thank you so much for sending so many questions to us, and we're going to try our best to answer most of them. So no fancy introductions, let's just jump right into the heart of the matter. Well, to start things off, a lot of you asked us how is the Apache for taller riders who are above 6 feet, and of course for short riders as well. And that shout out goes out to Sudarshan, Arun, Kiran, Usama, Rahul, Ayush, Iskman, Ashlyn, Subhidit, Satyabrata, Vikram and Shubham. Well, we'd much rather just show you. Now we've got Ishan on the bike and he's 5'4", and as you can see in the parking for him it is a bit of a struggle as he has to tiptoe the bike. The seat height is the second highest in class at 800 mm. But when he's riding the bike, of course, it's no problem at all. It's quite comfortable even for his height when actually in motion. But what does it feel like for taller riders? Well, to answer that, we've got Shravan here who is 6'2", and of course as you can see, for him to move the bike in the parking, there's no problem, he can get his feet down very comfortably. But how is it for him to actually ride the motorcycle? Well, it's surprisingly comfortable for someone who's even over 6 feet tall, as the tank has enough space for your knees to lock on very comfortably, and a lot of the other comfort has to do with the posture, which we'll just get to. Then you asked us about the riding position and the comfort for both rider and pillion, and that question comes from Prateek. Well, Prateek, the riding position is a bit on the sportier side, and that's thanks to the high set foot pegs for the rider. Now they aren't very rear set, so which means they aren't too aggressive, but the handlebars also, they are a bit set on the lower side, which means you have a slight lean towards them. It's not so much that it will hurt your wrists, and we found long periods on the seat very comfortable. As for the pillion seat, it might appear a little smaller in terms of area, but it's actually quite comfortable. It's also very well padded. The only thing I'll say is that the foot pegs for the pillion, they are set a bit on the higher side, which means the pillion has to seat a little bit knees up. But overall comfort on the bike is very good. Okay, so Kiran, Mahesh, Naveen, Rishikesh and Manish, you guys asked us about the refinement levels and the vibrations of this engine, and TVS has again surprised us big time with this motor. Now the older RTR 160, it had a big problem with vibrations. This one has gone to the other end of the spectrum and is one of the most refined bikes in its segment. Of course, it is a single cylinder, which means there are some vibrations, and you feel them at about 6000 RPM as a mild buzz in the foot pegs, but the handlebars remain vibe free. Now you get some vibration at 9000 RPM, which you can feel in the tank and the center panel, but apart from that, the vibrations are almost none. So you guys wanted to know how the RTR 160 handles daily commuting duties and how smooth the gearbox feels in traffic, and that was asked to us by Hemant and Darshan. Well, first of all, for daily commuting, the bike works really well, primarily because, as you mentioned before, it is a very comfortable motorcycle. But secondly, and more importantly, that motor is very tractable, which means it pulls really easily from low speeds in high gears. The RTR can pull from as low as 20 km per hour in 4th gear. Now that is amazing. And then the clutch itself is quite light, which means in traffic it's a breeze. And that gearbox, well, there's only one word for it, and that is a makhan. We had the bike for 2 weeks and I don't think we've had a single misshift in that time. And continuing that discussion about the city, Robert and Ratan have asked, how easy is it to maneuver this bike in the city? Well, even though it has the second longest wheelbase in its class, the bike actually turns really quickly. Also helping that is the wide handlebar that gives you lots of leverage. So maneuvering through traffic is very easy. Okay, so Puneet and Omkar asked about the suspension and ride quality of this motorcycle, while Taranchu asked whether that rear monoshock is adjustable for payload. Well, Taranshu, it is. It's got 7 steps, but it is a little difficult to access because you have to get the seat off first only to access the adjuster ring, and even then it's a bit of a reach. As for the suspension itself, it's been tuned by Showa and it feels quite sophisticated. Yes, it is a bit on the firmer side, but it never feels harsh or jarring. And on that front, the suspension really handles our roads very well. The way it goes over speed breakers and bad roads is really impressive. And now coming to a question that almost everybody asked. Just to name a few: Gurudeep, Infotech Cohen, if I'm saying that right, Aditya, Hari, Satish, Karan, Anish, Shubhu, Kiran, Krishnan, Debashish and Saurav. All of you asked about efficiency, and this bike does impress in that front. In the city, it managed 50.9 km per litre, and that number went up to 56.1 on the highway. It is in fact one of the most efficient bikes in its segment, only to be beaten by the Gixxer SF FI. Now, we haven't tested the FI version of the RTR 160 yet, but we suspect that it might do better than that as well. And one more question that you guys were keen on was the comparison of the RTR 160 to the Suzuki Gixxer. And you can find a link to the test comparison of those two bikes down in the description. So just how good is it for long distance riding or for touring? And that's a question many of you asked, including Sanjay, Sherwin, Firoz, Bishajit, Vikas and Shantanu. It's actually quite good, and that's down to a few reasons. Firstly, even though the posture is a bit on the sportier side, spending long hours in the saddle is no problem because the seat itself is quite comfortable. Yes, the foot pegs are set a little higher and they too take a little bit of getting used to. But overall, the bike is very comfy. And the kind of speeds it will do on the highway, there's no real issue of wind blast either. But what also works for it over the long haul is its high highway efficiency, which when you combine with a 12-litre fuel tank gives you a range of about 600 to 650 kilometers for every tank full. That's of course if you ride at a reasonable pace. And that brings us to the next question asked by Sanchit, who asked what is the best highway cruising speed for this bike. So in 5th gear, you're doing about 6000 RPM, a little over that, at about 80 kph, and that's how the bike feels the most relaxed. But anywhere from 80 to 90 is absolutely fine. Go beyond that though, the motor feels smooth, but it does take a big toll on your efficiency. Surprisingly, none of you directly asked us about performance figures, although a lot of you did ask us to compare it to other bikes in its class. Well, with 16.5 PS on tap, it's not just the most powerful bike in its class, it's also the one with the best power-to-weight ratio in the segment. So among the 160s in the sprint from 0 to 60 km per hour, this is the quickest bike, bar none. But what's more impressive is that the pull right from the word go feels very smooth and linear. That said, when compared to the FI, the carb bike feels like it has slightly more punch in the mid-range. Of course, we have only ridden the FI on the track, and this road test is only focusing on the carbureted version. So Rachit asked, how is the handling? And Rachit, that is a fantastic question, because TVS made a big hoo-ha about this bike being race-derived, and it does live up to that hype, and it shows in its handling ability. Yes, it turns in quickly, but it doesn't feel twitchy like the RTR 200 and certainly not as twitchy as the older Apache 160. The turn-in is quick, but it feels progressive and very well controlled. And the TVS Ramola tires, they do provide a fair amount of grip. However, mid-corner stability is pretty decent. I'm sure that this bike would feel significantly better with a set of Pirellis. DH Verma and Baby World have asked how the brakes perform on this RTR 160, and Fahad and Manoj asked if you can install ABS on this. Well, firstly, we would recommend against retrofitting any aftermarket ABS on this bike. TVS already introduced the ABS version of the RTR 200 recently, and we believe that the ABS on RTR 160 will follow sometime soon. But yes, you're right, we believe that off the bat TVS should have at least offered one version of the RTR 160 with ABS. And if you think we've been singing praises about the RTR 160 for so long, here's where we don't, because braking is one area where this bike needs some serious improvement. Feel from the lever is virtually non-existent, and even bite is below average. It's not dangerous by any means, but this bike has the longest braking distance from 60 and 80 in this category. And coming to the instrument cluster, Aditya has asked why hasn't TVS provided a gear position indicator for the carb variant. Now we believe TVS has done this to justify the price difference between the carb and the FI versions. And while we understand that the carb version will not get such features in the instrument cluster as a trip computer, a gear position indicator is something that was definitely very useful and should have been included on the carb bike as well. So how does the headlight perform? That question was asked to us by Roos VS, am I saying it right? And Sai Krishna. Well, we are not very happy about the performance of this headlight. The low beam is set quite low and even the spread is not really very adequate. So on darker roads, you end up staying on the high beam quite often. So Pradyumna and Aditya want to know about this bike's heat management and also how the ram air system works. Well, honestly, this category of bike doesn't really have any heating issues even in our hot climate. And this is one of two bikes in this category which has an oil cooler as well, which means it runs cooler than its competition. As for the ram air, it's basically a duct which runs from the front of the bike to the spark plug, and what it does, it basically directs air from there right onto the plug, which is among the hotter areas of the engine, and that helps the engine run much cooler. So Ajay asked us, is this as aggressive as the older 160? In one word, no. In the real world or on the racetrack, it will leave the older bike behind. But does it have that raw, almost rough character of the older bike? Not at all. But that's a good thing. Surprisingly, a lot of you asked us whether you should buy the RTR 160 or its larger sibling, the RTR 200. And that list includes Saurav, Vishnu, Akash, Asad, Nikhil, Aditya and Trambak. Well, if you compare apples to apples, if you compare the FI variants, you're paying about 17,000 rupees more for the RTR 200. And if you compare the carburetor version with the rear disc brake on the 160 to the carb version of the RTR 200, you're paying about 11,000 rupees more. And for that extra moolah, you're getting fatter forks at the front, suspension tuned by KYB, not Showa, but primarily you're getting a slipper clutch which the 160 doesn't have at all. And also you have the option of ABS. And you get more performance as well. 260 it's a second faster and 200 it's 1.5 seconds quicker. But that comes at the price of fuel efficiency, which is definitely a lot lower than the RTR 160. So let me put it this way. If you want performance, yes, the RTR 200 makes sense. But for pretty much everything else, I think the 160 does a good job. So where does that leave us with the Apache RTR 160 4V? Well, it can be summed up by answering a question that Vishnu asked. Is it worth its cost? It offers segment-leading performance without compromising on any of the practical aspects, and that is pretty much the prime directive for its category. Plus, if you look at all that it offers, it's priced quite competitively as well. Sure, there are some misses, and the brakes could have been better, it could have had ABS from the word go, and the headlight could definitely use a lot of improvement. But overall, it's a package that's just very hard to fault. So to sum it up, is it worth it? Hell yes!